Okay. You've heard it said to those of old. Who's the people of old? Where's this? Where do we first find this? Okay, let me tell you this. Where's the first place we find this codified into law? Law of Moses. Back in when? Ancient days of the patriarchs, right? Well, not the days of the patriarchs. The days when God brought them out of Egypt and delivered the law to them. It's the first place we find it written down. But has the law against murder been in place from the very beginning? Well, certainly so, or else Cain would have walked, right? There would have been no punishment for Cain. They knew from the very beginning that the taking of a life was prohibited by God. It was unlawful. Even though it wasn't written down and codified into Mosaic law, it was still a law. You don't kill people. You know, to defend yourself, if someone was committed in the act of defending yourself, you're not held responsible for murder. And the idea here more is the idea, you've heard it said to those of old, you shall not murder. That's why it says, thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not murder. All right? So, and whoever murders will be liable to judgment. All right? So let's think about that for just a couple seconds. All right? The idea that you have given over yourself, the idea that you've given yourself over to sin. Did Cain kill Abel in just a fit of passion, or did he premeditate that? He thought about it beforehand. Because remember, God had to talk to Cain about his attitude and his anger. He mentions this to him. He says, be careful because sin is waiting at the door. All right? So already Cain's mind had gone into that dark place. He had looked at his brother with anger in his heart, and probably no small amount of jealousy or envy, because Abel was doing as God commanded and Cain was not doing what God commanded. And
also what God wanted.
What's that?
Didn't Cain know what God wanted, but just didn't want to
it would have been a rather illogical God that said, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but whoever brings it to me, whoever thinks about what I'm thinking about and brings it to me, that's the one I'm going to be happy with. No, of course not. Yeah, he had to have told them, this is what I want from you. And I do not believe in one way, shape, or form it was because Adam brought meat and Cain brought vegetables. It was because Abel brought the first fruits of his flock. Cain brought food, all right? I think the impression more here is that Cain brought the leftovers. He took the best for himself and he brought what was left over to God. I don't think it had anything to do, because we don't find animal sacrifice as worship until the law of Moses. Not until the law of Moses. So Cain brought not the best of what he had, but it says that Abel brought the first fruits of his flock, brought the very best to God. So it was an attitude rather than what he was physically bringing. But he says, be careful, for sin crouches at the door for you. And it wasn't long before Cain opened that door, didn't he? He purposed in his heart that he was going to take his brother's life, and he rose up in the field and he killed him. We don't know what all the circumstances were. I'll let Hollywood make a movie and butcher it, and then we'll find out exactly what the issue was. But as far as we know, we don't know. But murder was wrong, and murder requires forethought and the idea of planning. So this is someone who has not only thought the idea, but given themselves up to the idea. They've abandoned themselves to sin. All right? And I think that that's part of what determines the degree of punishment, is the idea of how far have we abandoned ourselves to go into sin. All right? Worse sins end up in worse punishment. That's that way in the criminal justice system, or at least it should be. The worse sin or worse crime that you commit, the more harsh the punishment. And unfortunately, sometimes the criminal justice system gets it wrong. They send people who have done fairly minor things. I'm not in any way, shape, or form condoning this kind of behavior, but there are guys who are languishing in prison for 10 years because they had a small amount of pot on them. Now, I don't smoke pot. Don't recommend that anybody smoke pot. But the idea that these guys are going to go to jail for that period of time, but then you have guys that have built the American public out of billions of dollars, those guys go to the minimum security because they didn't pull a gun. They didn't pull a gun. It reminds me of that old that line from The Godfather. He wanted his son to be a lawyer because he said a man with a briefcase can steal 10 times more than a man with a gun. That's the absolute truth. So you got these guys languishing in jail for 10, 15 years because they had this tiny amount of pot on them, but then you've got guys walking around scot-free, but they've built the American public out of billions of dollars. The criminal justice system doesn't always get it right, but but it should, if it was perfect, if it was done correctly by people who were thinking logically, worse crimes get worse punishment. Less crimes get less punishment. That just makes perfect sense. But you see, here's the thing. God does work perfectly in his administration of his justice. You ever heard of the Code of Hammurabi? Code of Hammurabi? Okay. The Code of Hammurabi was supposed to be, I think it was the first time that law was actually codified and written down. And it's a marvel because people, they said, they thought that back in those days it was just sort of everybody, just live the best you possibly can. And if you want to kill somebody, you could kill somebody. And it was just basically a Wild West. But it wasn't. The Code of Hammurabi brought a justice system, and it wrote it down. The problem is the punishment for most of the crimes was death, but it at least was written down, and you knew what was up in store for you if you did something wrong. But see, here's the thing. This is exactly what God has done. It's exactly what he's done. He says, this is the punishment for this sin. This is the punishment for this sin. This is the punishment for this sin. And if you will avail yourself of my justice, then you don't have to suffer punishment. But if you don't, I will require recompense. And it will be the satisfaction plus the consideration. And if you cannot pay, I will put you somewhere until you pay, and you can't ever pay. So that's where you will be for an eternity. Brings a little bit more down into our understanding about why God would do the things that he does. Now we're done. We'll pick this back up next week. We will finish it next week, I promise you that. Got 2 more points to make. The first one, of course, is the extent to which one has abandoned themselves to sin. Got a couple more points on that, and then I got 2 more major points, and that will finish out our study. Anybody got anything they want to add? Any?
Well, we talked about going down in some of those caverns where they turn the lights on, man-made light, keep these, and it's completely pitch black.
Well, I think for a lot of people it would be. Because remember, not only are you going to be in pitch black, but you're going to hear the figurative weeping and wailing of people around you who are in the same punishment. And you can't be comforted. There's no comfort. What comfort is there? There's no comfort in that. Even being with people. Have you ever been around people that are miserable? It's a terrible thing. And we should try to avoid it at any and all costs. No matter what it costs us, we try to avoid it. And the thing about it is, remember, there's a God that as he sees us in secret, he rewards us in public. We think that we can, people that think that they can somehow skirt hell, that there's some loophole they can exploit, there's some backroom deal that can be made, or there's some, ask Jonah if it works to run away from God. You can't. It says if you go up and you pull the mountain down on top of you, God knows exactly where you are. There is no escaping the perfect justice. So there's nothing that can be done except do what we had to do in this life to avoid the punishment in the first place. That's the only thing. And there are still people who think that they're going to somehow, make it. I don't know what they're thinking, or they're going to get out. There's a way to get out once you get in, or something along those lines. I don't know, but.
What are people out there telling that their relatives can pray them out?
Yeah. They play on their guilt, and if you give enough to the church, that's why finally the Catholic Church had to ban the selling of indulgences, because people thought they could buy their loved ones out of hell. It's a reprehensible thing, and that was one of the things that Martin Luther was so upset about, was the selling of indulgences. The idea that if you gave enough to the church, that would buy your loved ones way out of purgatory. It'd get them into heaven quicker. I mean, if you were a fighting person, you just want to punch somebody. Go ahead.
That reminds me, I'm thinking that's why the Catholics back in the day forbid anybody to have a Bible.
Right.
You can read it for yourself and you can see where they were corrupt.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, why would you want people to find out the truth? They're going to quit. And it was all about money. It was all about money and power. They did not want to lose that revenue stream about everything. I mean, and that hasn't changed, folks. I'll tell you this. I knew some folks that they wanted their kids to go to Catholic Sunday school, and they had to pay for their kids to go to Sunday school. And it was no small amount either. It was like, I think it was about $1,200 a year to send their kids to Catholic Sunday school now. Not a Catholic school, parochial school, I mean to Sunday school. They had to pay. It's all about the dollars. It's all about that money. All right.
I think I read an article a few years back about the German society and the government. They collect taxes for religious groups. And in this article, it said that they had just given the Catholic Church $5 or $6 billion as part of the taxes that they had collected.
Sure.
Now everybody in Germany has to pay it.
Yeah.
But they are sending it to the Catholic Church, whether they want it to go or not.
We know where that's going.
Yeah.
All right. We'll finish up here. 767 is our song of invitation. If we can pray for anybody, if anything going on that we need to let everyone know about, let us know.